What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pizza Buffet, Week 2 in the NFL, presented by Fanduel. I'm Rob Pizzola. I will be with you here for the next 1 hour, breaking down the entire Week 2 card. I'm really into it. I was up early this morning watching an amazing F1 race, actually one of the best I can remember in a long time. So I'm amped. I'm ready to go. Been scouring through information for the last couple hours and finalizing my numbers for today on the show. Appreciate everyone who's in the chat already this morning. I see a lot of commentary in the early going. It seems like the Carolina Panthers are a play today for some people. Godspeed. I do wish you the best. I will cover that game in every single one. Taking your questions throughout the show as well. Again, not tracking in betstamp this year. People skip the content. They just follow the picks. I'm not about that, really. But if you want to get all the reasons why, I gave a little bit of a rant off the top of last week's show explaining the process for this year. So if you want to check out Pizza Buffet from week 1, I got you covered there. But I'm going to give my numbers on every game on the board. Any props that I like as well. 6 and 3 on the props I gave out last week. If I give out a prop and I don't give a number associated with that, it's usually one of my pet peeves in the betting space. But if I give out a prop without a number associated with it, you can assume that I like it right across the market. So if I say I like XYZ over on passing yards, pretty much every number is good. I would encourage you to line shop, but any number in market is good. If you see news in real time, drop it in here. I'm very focused on these game previews. I shut everything else off around me, with the exception of this Sunday NFL countdown on my TV in front of me. But if there's any breaking news, do drop it in the chat. It is helpful as I'm just trying to keep focused and march ahead on this week 2 NFL card. Really, I mean, like 10, 1 o'clock games today. That'll be absolute chaos when we're approaching 3:30 p.m. Eastern time into the 4 o'clock hour. Only 3 late games. I hate when the NFL does that, but that's the way it stacks up today. Before we get into it, make sure you smash that like button down below. Here right before we start, let's get the likes up as much as possible before I get into every single one of these games here, as helps grow our channel here on YouTube. YouTube likes the likes, so let's get into it. All right, starting with game 1. It's the Las Vegas Raiders, and it is the Baltimore Ravens. I talked about this game quite a bit this week. We covered it on the Wednesday Best Bets show. We also talked about it in other media appearances this week. Line kind of has been shifting back and forth and has settled in around 8.5 here at Fanduel and pretty much every book across the board. Total did dip down to 40.5, 41 being a key number. So a significant move on the total, getting it down below that key number. Las Vegas has a very clean injury report. We need to keep an eye on Kyle Van Noy for Baltimore. That would be a big blow to their front seven. He fractured his orbital bone against Kansas City, but there's optimism that he's going to play. So we'll keep an eye on that. Nate Wiggins is out at corner. Hurts their depth a little bit, but it's not a huge loss. Generally speaking, I'm a little bit lower than the market on the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to be actively rooting against them today because of survivor pool implications and also because of some bets earlier in the week. But I make the Ravens a 7.5 point favorite in this game. I make the total 41. 8.5 to 7.5, not a ton of value there. It's not like 8 is completely dead, but it is somewhat insignificant in the grand scheme of things. The Raiders defense last week, I know everyone wants to talk about how, this Chargers run game against them bullied them around. It's kind of true, but with the exception of one big run that the Chargers broke off, it wasn't all that bad of a performance. I still like the Raiders front seven quite a bit. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, these are game-wrecking players. The secondary is a weakness for them, but the Ravens aren't the team that's necessarily going to be able to consistently attack downfield for a couple reasons. One, their offensive line is worse this year. 2, they don't have a ton outside of Zay Flowers. So if you look at week 1, Lamar Jackson was hurried on 8 of his throws against the Kansas City Chiefs. That was the most hurries in the entire league. One way that Baltimore can alleviate some of this pressure, run Derrick Henry. To me, Derrick Henry is a shell of his former self. And behind this run-blocking offensive line, I'm not sure that they're going to have success, considering the Raiders actually were very good at stopping the run last year as well. So I have some optimism for the Raiders defense. The offense is a different story. Some self-inflicted wounds last week. Zamir White had a fumble. Gardner Minshew had like a ridiculous fumble in that game. The Raiders still led for most of that game. They had a -3 turnover margin. They were within one score midway through the fourth quarter when, Antonio Pierce had the punt heard around the world. I don't trust Antonio Pierce. I think the Ravens have a coaching matchup advantage here, but all of that is accounted for in my numbers. I don't love the Ravens secondary this year. I mean, when we're talking about the Ravens, I think they got worse on both sides of the ball. Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers against this Baltimore secondary, that's a matchup that the Raiders can exploit. This isn't Mike McDonald running the Ravens D anymore. He's in Seattle. This is a different unit altogether. So I personally think this number is just a little bit high. Again, I make it 7.5, total 41. I think that the market's either giving the Ravens too much credit because of the near victory at Kansas City, which, by the way, they score on the first scripted drive of the game. Then the next 6 drives the Ravens have, they only put up 3 points. They missed a field goal, so it could have been 6 points, but they didn't really do anything outside of garbage time late in the game to come back there. The extra rest advantage, it's week 2. Like it's trivial. So nothing more to add to this game other than one prop look that I actually like. So Mike, let me just double check that the numbers are still before I recommend it really, really quickly here. Yeah. All right. Obviously, the Raiders drafted Brock Bowers. Michael Mayer, to me, is the forgotten guy. If you look at his receptions prop right now, you can get plus money on over 1.5. When we look at snap count week 1, Bowers was 41. Mayer was 34. I still don't think they're going to completely give up on him, and I think they're going to work him in on this offense. So Michael Mayer on receptions, I do like him over 1.5 on total receptions in this game. Plus money in most spots right now. Okay, move it along. How many points will Pierce cost his team today? We don't know. That's one of the real challenges with backing poorly coached teams. But remember, like the Raiders are not going to go 0-16, 0-17 against the spread because Antonio Pierce is their coach. He's going to make some bad decisions. They're still going to cover some games as well. Okay, game number 2, Chargers and Panthers. Already see a lot of talk about this in the chat as we signed on today. So the Chargers took all the early week money, and markets come back in on the Panthers. So we're down to 4.5 here. Juice towards the Chargers. Totals come down as well at 38.5. My number in this game is 4.5, total 39.5. So that's where I stand in market right now. I didn't have the stones to play the Panthers earlier in the week. They might just be really bad. I know it's week 2. We try not to overreact too much to week 1. But what was significant was the quarterback play for Carolina. And I'm not sure that they're going to be able to overcome it. Carolina has a couple of banged up players on the O-line. Damian Lewis, right tackle, Taylor Moton. It seems like the Carolina beat writers are not too concerned with the questionable tags there. So expect them to go. Josh Palmer is expected to play for the Chargers. If he were to miss the game, it'd be Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, Darius Davis behind him. Pretty ugly for the Chargers receiving core. Joey Bosa is banged up again. 2 DNPs. They didn't call up an edge rusher from the practice squad, so I'm going to assume Bosa plays. Aloha Gilman is out at safety for them, but it's week 2. Chargers already dealing with injuries. What else is new for this team? I talked last week. Listen, one of the challenges of putting yourself out there and doing content is you talk about every game, and like you're only as good as your worst opinion. I made a case for Carolina last week. I was completely wrong about it. Willing to admit that. In a week where I did very well for the most part, that was brutal. A lot of what I said, I think apply. Like they upgraded their offensive line. They have Deontay Johnson, better receiving core. But none of that matters if Bryce Young is terrible. And he played terribly last week. Not only was he bad, but like when he had chances to hit open receivers, he missed the throws. We're getting to the point now where it's hard to have any faith in Bryce Young turning that around. Now, I'm not sold on the Chargers at all. I talked about this with the Raiders game, but the Chargers played extremely conservative football last week. Justin Herbert, who, whether he's dealing with the plantar fascia issue or not, I don't know, but their passing game didn't exist last week. They don't have weapons on the outside. I imagine it's a very, very similar game plan for the Chargers this week and will be all year under Jim Harbaugh. Pound the rock. Joe Alt looked amazing. They want to utilize their tackles, strength of the offensive line. But again, I think that's a little bit overstated. Like you look at the Chargers last week, 176 net yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry. These are really good numbers. But if you take out J.K. Dobbins' 61-yard rush, that yards per carry goes down to 4.4. Their success rate running the ball was 32%. It's not like this was some sort of dominant Chargers run game where they're picking up 7-8 yards at a time. It was a lot of boom or bust. There is a potential for the Panthers to dial in on the run here, stack the box, and we can see if the Chargers are willing to adapt and throw the ball, or if they can beat that. It's just so much harder to do without Derek Brown being there as well. So lots of moving parts. My final number, 45, 4.5, 39.5. One thing I do like in this game is Miles Sanders over rushing yards. The game state completely got away from the Panthers last week. Like they got down so big, so early that they sort of had to abandon the run at some point early in the first half. Miles Sanders ended up with 22 rushing yards in that game, but Dave Canales is a big run the ball type of guy. He did do that. It was his MO, especially on early downs when he was with the Buccaneers last year. I think this number is too low with the usage that I would expect Miles Sanders to get. I don't love the Chargers run D either. So that's where I'm at there. That's the prop I like in this game. Miles Sanders over on rushing yards. Moving on. Third game on the board. It is the Saints. It is the Cowboys. Really interesting matchup here because I was kind of down on both these teams going into the season. They both won their first game of the year. As you can see on the graphic, my line in the game is Dallas minus 6.5. My total is 47 in this game. I am going to look to some Dak over on passing yards. This is an interesting matchup. You have to monitor the status of Saints left tackle, Tylese Fuaga. He traveled with the team. He has back tightness. He is considered a true game time decision. I haven't seen anything yet, but I believe Landon Young, who is a natural guard, would be the backup tackle for the Saints, which would be a problem. You look at what the Cowboys did to the Browns last week, and they destroyed an offensive line that had blocking issues. The Saints, in my opinion, go into the season with a bad O-line. If Fuaga's out and you get backups, that could be a real problem. Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson, trending out, not officially ruled out. I would be shocked if he plays. Luke Schoonmaker had 8 receptions last year as a rookie. He would play. Behind me on my left side here, I do have a Dallas Cowboys logo. I like to preach to everyone. I am a Cowboys fan personally. However, I try to remain as impartial and as unbiased when I break down their games as possible. I hope they beat the Saints by 57 points today, but I'm a realist as well. The thing that has me a little bit concerned is, and you've heard this ad nauseum this week, anyone who consumes content in the space, anything for that regard, would know that the Saints under Clint Kubiak as their new OC ran the most motion in the entire league last week. They also ran a bunch of play action. This looks like a new offense relative to last year. Derek Carr looked great. I know that it was the Panthers D. I don't think you can completely dismiss that performance. However, this is the one where I'm interested to see how they perform, because Derek Carr's not going to have the same type of time in the pocket this week as he did a week ago. Think of all those deep shots that developed last week. Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave. The Cowboys secondary can be exposed, but you got to give the QB time to throw. And that's going to be a big matchup to watch. On the other side of things, I'm not super convinced on the Dallas offense just yet. We obviously have to monitor Marshawn Lattimore's injury here for the New Orleans Saints as well. Listed as questionable. Don't know if he's going to play. Makes a huge difference for that defense. Dallas got into a good game state last week against the Browns. The final score is a little bit misleading in that Dallas's offense was very boomer bust. Wasn't high in terms of success rate. Now, that would be expected against the Browns D, and the Saints just don't pose the same problems. They don't have the same type of pass rush that the Browns do, but I'm not sold on the Cowboys offense just yet. Lattimore's confirmed out, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good timing. And I agree here. Lattimore is like overrated, but they do want to play a lot of man. Indoors, it matters. So based off my numbers, not much to do here, but the Dak passing yardage, I mean, you're looking at numbers south of 260 right now across the market. We got to go over on that number. I mean, this was the MO for the Cowboys last year. And I know it's not the same O-line. I get it. But they're not a team that takes the foot off the gas when they go up in these home games. Last year, they'll continue to pass. Their running game is not giving them much, and I don't think it's going to give them a whole lot this year. I do expect a big game from Dak Prescott. So we're playing the over on his passing yardage for this week's game. Okay, before we get into our fourth game here, and I'll continue to move through the board, rotation number order, but I do want to remind you to kick off this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. I'm a big fan of the product. You see it in our live watch-alongs here that we do every Thursday, Sunday, Monday Night Football, where we integrate the product into our broadcast. It's solid. It's up all the time. Great app. Tons of offerings. Right now, all customers get a profit boost every single NFL game day. That means you can pump up your gridiron winnings multiple times a week. Today, 3 offers. Double your winnings profit boost token on any money line bet. There's an anytime TD profit boost token. And there's same game profit boost tokens for the 4 p.m. slate and for Sunday night football. So there's tons of ways you can get in on the action. Money line spreads, player props, more. Take advantage of those tokens. Obviously, you got great live betting. You have lightning fast bet settlement, instant withdrawals. FanDuel makes betting on the NFL easier than before. Just visit fanduel.com/forwardprogress. Download FanDuel today. You must be 21 plus and present in select states, 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms for offers at sportsbook.fanduel.com. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. The numbers are available to you there on screen for Connecticut, the website for Maryland as well, New York, Massachusetts as well. And if you do have any responsible gaming issues, I mean, I take this stuff very seriously. So make sure you're not betting if it's a real problem for you. We'll push into our fourth game here. 65% of you that are watching right now are actually not subscribed here on Forward Progress. If you're in this far, show us some love. Hit that subscribe button down below, because as long as we build up the subs, we'll keep doing this stuff every single year. But please hit that subscribe button. All right. Bucks and Lions. This market has really drifted out here. I'm actually kind of surprised, in all honesty, that there wasn't a little bit of buyback. I make this game Detroit -7 right now, 51.5. I'll talk about the injuries that the Bucs have and Baker's performance last week. And then we do have a prop look afterwards in McMillan under on receptions as well. But yeah, market is still sitting at 7.5. We saw some books this morning go to 8, back down to 7.5 on this one. The good news for Tampa Bay secondary, Zion McCollum is going to play. Tyke Smith, dealing with an illness all week, is also going to play. The bad news, and it's a big one, Antoine Winfield, arguably the best safety in the league, is out. Depth corner Josh Hayes is out. Bryce Hall is on IR. They are thin in the secondary. On offense, their right tackle, Luke Godecki, is out. Luke Godecki, I always butcher his name. Kalia Cansey, Logan Hall, missed last week's game against Washington on the D-line. Cansey's out. We don't know about Logan Hall yet. It's a mess for Tampa Bay. And that's why you saw this number drift from the opener, -6.5, all the way to where we are now. That's all the way to 7.5. It's not all roses for Detroit either, though. That's why I'm kind of surprised we didn't see any buyback. I mean, we still don't know the status of right tackle Penei Sewell. Kirby Joseph at safety, we don't know. Jamison Williams is expected to play, broke out in week 1. Marcus Davenport out on the D-line. So there were some injuries for Detroit here to take into account as well. Arthur says Dan Campbell's a point spread monster. You can't deny it. Can't deny that. The Lions had a lot of success against Tampa Bay last year offensively. And that was with a better secondary than the Bucs are going to bring into this game. Like, Goff had 2 very good games against Tampa, including one in the playoffs. 56% success rate, 53% success rate in 2 games. You have Ben Johnson, who is a stud of an offensive coordinator. I don't really know the path to success for the Bucs defense. Like, yes, they held Washington's offense in check last week. Jaden Daniels, first career start. This is a different beast. The challenge is Detroit's defense. I mean, when you consider the offensive line injuries for the Rams last week, Puka Nacua getting hurt mid-game, they still move the ball rather effectively on that Lions defense. And the Bucs have weapons. I mean, we know Baker has eyes for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Lions secondary is a bit better this season, but I'm not sure it's all that improved. Baker looked good last week. Really good. There was a trend last year, or a theme, I should say, with the Bucs last year, where they struggled on early downs, and Baker overcame that on 3rd and 4th down. Same thing continued this past week. Mayfield was elusive. Played honestly one of the best games of any quarterback last week. You have to take the defense into account, and this is an upgrade in defense. But I still think that there is a decent likelihood that the Bucs are able to move the ball. At the very least, when the Lions start playing soft, if they're up late in the game, the Bucs can score on that. So I'm leaning Bucs at the current market number. Huge limits here on Sunday morning. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not the one that's going to beat those Sunday morning limits, but that's where I'm at on the game if I did have to bet it right now. Jalen McMillan, under 2.5 receptions. I know he is seeing a lot of the field in terms of snap count, but if you watch Baker in week 1, he has eyes for Godwin, Evans, and Rachaad White. Like, these are the guys that he is regularly looking to. And when things break down, rather than looking to sometimes his second read, third read, he'll just tuck it and run. And this happens quite a bit with him. So I'm not sold on McMillan. I'm going under on his receptions for this game. All right, going to keep it moving here. And I'm going to start getting a little bit faster with some of the games that I don't necessarily have an opinion on. This one is fascinating to me. Indy, Green Bay. I love breaking down games like this. I'm completely opposite market on this game. I make the line Indy 3, total 39.5. Market has moved heavily towards the Packers. I think the downgrade from Jordan Love to Malik Willis is understated. I know the people arguing for the Packers believe it's overstated. I think it's understated because I think that Malik Willis is terrible. And yes, the Colts have a lot of injuries on defense. I think they are less impactful when you are facing a terrible quarterback. So much talk about, the look-ahead line in this game was, whatever, Packers 4.5. This is too big of a move. Stop putting stock into the look-ahead lines for one, because if you gave me Colts plus 4.5 at Packers with Jordan Love, I would take that in a heartbeat anyways. So I don't buy the whole look-ahead line thing. But Malik Willis is legitimately terrible. I've referenced it on a few shows this week, including Wednesday Best Bets. But of all quarterbacks that have had at least 100 dropbacks over the past 5 years, Malik Willis is dead last in EPA per play. He's behind Josh Rosen, Ryan Finley, Trace McSorley, Jake Luton. 34.7% success rate. Cleve TA did a bunch of work on this. If you go through Malik Willis's play log, he has 2 pass plays that are more than 18 yards on 67 pass attempts. Both of them were bubble screens to a tight end and a running back. Yes, the Colts have injuries. Julian Blackmon is out. Possibly could be without DeForest Buckner and Kwity Paye as well. Back injury and hamstring injury, respectively. But there's no quarterback to beat them on the other side. They can stack the box. I love LaFleur as a head coach. He's amazing. But this isn't like Malik Willis has been in this Packers system for 2 years now. He was cut at the end of training camp by the Titans, picked up. This is a Packers offense that is reliant on explosive plays. They had 9 explosive plays in week 1. Jordan Love pushes downfield. If they're just going to line it up and try to run it down Indy's throat with Josh Jacobs, I think any team in the league can defend that and force the quarterback to try to beat them. And I'm just not convinced that Malik Willis can do that. The Colts can establish the run with Jonathan Taylor. The Packers have struggled on run defense for a very long time. Anthony Richardson, sure, boom or bust. I completely get that. He can have a horrible game. But I just don't agree. I think we're looking at a historically bad quarterback here. I don't mind taking a backup quarterback every now and then, but I think we're looking at a historically bad quarterback. And that's where I get on the game. Nothing from a props perspective here. Nothing at a props perspective here. Okay, next game. Cleveland-Jacksonville. Another game where you've seen back and forth a lot this week. There was a service release on the Jags early in the week. Number got bet up. Seemed like every other service then released the Browns at some point or another. And we're sitting here at Fanduel, Jacksonville -3, -118, total 41.5. I am very close to exactly on market in this game. I have Jacksonville, I'll call it a -3.25, total of 41.5. So pretty much right where we are. The early week optimism about the Browns O-line faded as the week went on. So their left tackle, Jedrick Wills, ruled out. Jack Conklin still has a chance to go. He took some snaps actually at left tackle in practice this week. He could line up there if needed. We'll keep an eye out on that. David Njoku is out, so Jordan Akins gets the tight end 1 duty. I don't like the Browns offense without their tackles. It's that simple. Now, this isn't the Cowboys defense, but Josh Allen Hines, Trayvon Walker, these guys can get pressure. And I know Jacksonville has injuries in the secondary. Tyson Campbell on IR. Darnell Savage is out at safety. But I have to see something from Deshaun first. It's a much better matchup. The Browns can go 3 wide a lot, and they can move the ball. I'll actually talk about a prop I like in this game. But the Browns can go 3 wide and move the ball. It's on Watson to make those throws. And I'm not convinced that he can just yet. I'm also not sold on Jacksonville, by the way. Everyone's upgrading the offense, and I mean, look at what the Bills just did to the Dolphins defense this past week. Jacksonville had 40 yards after catch in week 1. That's the lowest in the league. Yards after catch is largely influenced by your OC and your quarterback. Not great against the Dolphins D. They run the ball a ton still. I mean, for all, again, going into the year was, the Jaguars are going to air it out a little bit more. Well, I mean, they still ran over 50% of the time on first down last week. In neutral game states, they were running more than 50% of the time. Against a bad Dolphins pass rush, Trevor Lawrence took pressure on 35% of his dropbacks. So, I don't know. I would have really liked to be involved with the Browns here, but didn't get the positive injury upside that I needed, per se. I'm also very, very low on Deshaun Watson, very low. If you think that he's closer to the 20th best quarterback in the league, I would almost certainly have value on the Browns in this. The Browns in this spot. I like Elijah Moore over 2.5 receptions. Across the market, he's lined in the same spot. He played 71 snaps last week. Now, sure, they were trailing, got 6 targets, but no David Njoku again. I think you continue to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and there's some encouragement on getting the ball out of Watson's hands early. Elijah Moore over. I have this priced much differently. We're looking at minus 128 at Fanduel. I'm in the range of minus 160 on this particular prop. And just confirmation that Jack Conklin. So again, unfortunately, just didn't get the positive regression needed to play the Browns here. Appreciate everyone who's keeping us updated in the chat here. Love that. Love that. All right. Keep it going. San Fran, Minnesota. Lots of love for Minnesota in market. Totally understandable. They played amazing last week. As close to a flawless game as you could have had. This is a different animal. 49ers are a different beast than the New York Giants. I usually kind of love these spots for these home dogs. And Minnesota did take money all the way down to 4.5. Now back up to 5. But I think there's a lot of paths to success for the 49ers here, who are, once again, just an unreal team. CMC is going to miss the game again. He's on IR. Talanoa Hufanga is out at safety as well. Minnesota without Jordan Addison, to me, is a low-key, very big injury. As you see up on screen, FanDuel's at 4.5. That means Brandon Powell, Jalen Naylor move up the lineup. You have issues on the right side of the Vikings O-line. Ed Ingram, Brian O'Neill, questionable. Now, Ingram has allowed the most pressures in the league since 2022. So not going to be a huge blow if he's out. But O'Neill would be. Harrison Smith would be, who's questionable at safety. Lots of injuries. I make San Fran a 6-point favorite in the game. And the total 47. So I thought the early number was right. And there's been some movement against San Fran. But this will be a very make or break game, in my opinion, of Minnesota. Because I do think that Minnesota is better than people gave them credit for in market going into there was people that were playing Minnesota, last winless team and looking at the schedule and being like, oh, this team's going to be terrible. Kevin O'Connell, solid head coach, really good offensive plays last week. I mean, Sam Darnold is not a good quarterback, but you can see how Kevin O'Connell takes below average quarterbacks and puts them in a position to succeed. He just does that. And you have to give him credit for that. But this is a huge upgrade in defense from the Giants to the 49ers. The 49ers don't have the pass rush that they once did. But Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa, they can cause issues for the Minnesota offensive line. I also have huge concern for the Vikings and their pass defense. Flores did a great job against Daniel Jones last week. You know who we didn't do a good job against? That was Brock Purdy last year. Flores blitzed him a ton in that game. Actually, you know what? I should rephrase that, because Purdy was efficient but didn't put up a ton of yardage in that game. So I'll rephrase that a little bit. But I really like this 49ers offense. Like, they did not skip a beat. I think the Jets D is overrated, but for Trent Williams not having played in preseason, you had Brandon Ayuk holding out. They looked really good. And remember, back to last year's Minnesota game, there was no Debo, there was no Trent Williams in that game for San Fran. So I think the market is maybe a little too high on the Vikings here, maybe just a little bit down on San Fran overall. But 647 are my numbers in that game. All right, keep it moving here. 630 people watching in real time, 200 likes. Smash that like button down below. Please do so. Helps us go a long way in growing our content. Seattle, New England, coming up next here. New England money pushes this back down. I think a lot of this is to do with the Seattle injury report, but depending on where you shop, Fanduel right now is 3.5 plus a minus 120 shaded towards the Patriots. Some spots are Seahawks -3 shaded towards the Seahawks, obviously. My number in this game is 3.5. My total's 38.5. Very much on market, but injuries are hitting Seattle. Kenneth Walker's out at running back. That means Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, increased workload. George Fant is out at right tackle. Abraham Lucas is still on the PUP list. So Seattle's down to third string right tackle. Probably Stone Forsythe going to start there. Uchenna Nwosu out on D. Jerome Baker, Tyrell Dotson banged up in the linebacking core. It's tough for them. Now, I just don't like credit to New England. They beat Cincy last week. But this is a team that has no offensive burst. They don't. Jacoby Brissett was 5 yards per attempt last week. Didn't really play all that well against the Bengals defense that's not very good. They cannot throw downfield. They ran the ball 31 times. They passed the ball 16 times last week. And that's going to be a regular theme for this team, in my opinion. Seattle has a great defensive coordinator. Great head coach that used to be a great defensive coordinator in Mike McDonald. I know it's just Bo Nix last week, but they made him look terrible. They forced a ton of turnover-worthy plays. Denver only had a 25% success rate running the ball. I don't see the path to success for the New England offense. Now, Seattle struggled to start the game against Denver last week, and as the week went on, the offense just got a lot better. I'm maybe willing to admit that I could be wrong about the Patriots defense, and the absence of Bill Belichick is not going to be as big of an issue as I originally perceived. But I just trust Seattle so much more to move the ball, even with injuries on the right side of their offensive line. 3.5, 38.5 as the total number. I do like a prop in this one. Austin Hooper for the Patriots. Not lined everywhere right now, but his receiving yards is in the 10.5 range. FanDuel's 10.5 minus 110. I like that over. He played 36 snaps last week, got 4 targets. The Pats don't have a wide receiver who can win on the outside not only against the Seattle corners, but pretty much against a lot of teams that they're going to go up against. I do think Brissett's going to look to Hooper a lot. Obviously, they have Hunter Henry there, and that's like the go-to. But when you look at the snap counts from last week, Hooper saw a lot of the field. Over 10.5, Austin Hooper. Keep it moving. Jets and Titans. DJ Reed ruled out after being limited in Friday's practice. Actually, missed Friday's practice. Limited Wednesday, Thursday. That is a big blow against Ridley, Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. I make the Jets minus 3.25. Also don't like this defense with the absence of Reddick, losing Huff in the offseason. Total 42. Obviously, by this number, you can clearly tell that I like the Titans in this game. It's the second time in 2 weeks that I'll be betting against the Jets in some capacity, but the Jets D to me is completely overrated. I mean, the 49ers scored on 8 straight drives. They just got their left tackle back from who didn't play in training camp. Brandon Ayuk not seeing the field on his regular snap count. No Christian McCaffrey. They move the ball, no problem. Now, the Titans offense is not the 49ers offense, and they struggled at times against the Bears, but they can run the ball successfully, and they will try to run the ball successfully. Pollard showed some burst last week, and now you have DeAndre Hopkins healthier a week later, up his snap count. I mean, if you had Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, DJ Reed, all on these 3 receivers, I'd be less optimistic, but losing Reed in the slot, I think makes a big difference. But I really feel like this Jets defense is way overrated. Way overrated. Got to just fingers crossed that Will Levis is not fucking flipping passes out to people this week. On the other side, the 49ers blitzed 6% of the time before the fourth quarter last week, and Rodgers was pressured 28% of the time. I also have growing concerns about the Jets O-line. That Titans D might be a sneaky, very good unit. Jeffrey Simmons is healthy. L'Jarius Sneed there now. I know it was Caleb Williams' first career start, but this is Nathaniel Hackett. He did the same shit that we're accustomed to against the 49ers, running it on early downs, really predictable offense. I know Aaron Rodgers looked good when we saw him throw the ball, but too many points. Too many points. I get this, Paul, and I totally understand this point of view. We work hard for our money, at least some of us do. Wagering on Will Levis could be like drinking bleach. But potentially overvaluing the Titans D off of the Caleb Williams game, but I did like this team going into the year. I don't know how they didn't cover last week, but it's very misleading final score. Titans, in my opinion, should be somewhere between a 3 and 3.5 point dog. Small prop I like in this game. Tony Pollard, 51.5 rush yards. I do like the over there on that particular prop. I think there's lots of instances where he gets carries in this game. And if the Jets run D can't stop anything, like against Jordan Mason last week, you'll see Tennessee attack that, in my opinion. Giants and Washington. Gave this out as my best bet on the Wednesday Best Bet show this week. Hashtag wrong team favored, in my opinion. I like the Giants. They're missing Nick McLeod at corner. Commanders are likely going to be missing Cleveland Farrell. But outside of that, nothing impactful. The Malik Neighbors injury early in the week has resolved itself. He's going to play. I make the Giants between a 0.5 and 1 point favorite, small favorite in the game, 43.5 total in this one. Not super impressed with Jaden Daniels like everyone else seems to be. Looked great with his legs at times. I'm still very concerned with the Washington offense. I think TA pointed this out this week as well on the Monday show, but Cliff Kingsbury, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? 19 of Jaden Daniels' 23 pass attempts were behind the line of scrimmage or less than 10 yards in the air. He missed Terry McLaurin on a downfield shot. This is not going to be an explosive offense, in my opinion. And as bad as the Giants' defense might be, they have the better defense in this game, in my opinion. I like their front seven. Yes, you can throw on these guys, but is Jaden Daniels going to be that guy? I don't know. One thing about Jaden Daniels in college, his pressure to sack rate was terrible. That was the knock on him going into the season. Week 1, he was fine. As it just totally amended itself, I'm not quite there yet. Now, Giants offense, what do you want me to say? Horrible game. Brian Flores had Daniel Jones completely confused. Baker Mayfield had a 74% dropback success rate against Washington last week. Baker's better than Daniel Jones, don't get me wrong, but you have Brian Daboll, who's an offensive head coach. You have good receivers for the Giants against a Commanders secondary that, in my opinion, is the worst in the league. They literally cannot cover anyone. It's not just starting this year. Go back to the end of last year. Outside of Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen in the front of that interior defense, they have nothing. So I think we're in a situation here where people have spun the Washington loss to Tampa, where they got absolutely blown out, by the way, not even in the game. They've spun that as more of a positive because it was Jaden Daniels' first start versus the Giants, who's a complete negative. Do you put any stock into Dan Quinn's familiarity scheming up D versus Daniel Jones? I'm a Cowboys fan. I've lived through the Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn stinks. I'm just going to tell you right. There's certain coaches and coordinators Dan Quinn was not good. Cowboys D, even if they have less talent, will be more successful under Mike Zimmer than Dan Quinn. The combo of Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury should haunt people's dreams, in my opinion. Giants today. I fully expect that clip to be cut, by the way, and used against me when Washington wins 31-10. No, I seriously do like the Giants quite a bit. Late games. Rams and Cardinals. Market opened Rams favored. Arizona got bet. And now we're moving back towards the Rams. So the money line here at Fanduel is -112, -104. Cardinals slightly favored in the game. Total 47.5. I make the Rams a half-point favorite, and I make the total 47. There could be some sneaky value in the under here, as much as I think the Cardinals are an over team. But Arizona's without the right tackle, Jonah Williams. He goes to IR. Kelvin Beachum starts at right tackle. Kelvin Beachum is no bueno. No bueno. The left side of the Rams O-line is a problem. Alaric Jackson still suspended. Steve Avila, their guard, goes to IR. I think Jonah Jackson is moving over to left guard. Bo Limmer, who they drafted, I want to say 5th or 6th round this year, I think, starts at center. And Rob Havenstein's back at tackle as well. So some shuffling on the Rams O-line after what they had to endure against the Lions. The Rams secondary, Colby Durant questionable. Their slot corner, Quentin Lake, is questionable. But it seems like both are trending towards playing, which is good news because Darius Williams, their best corner, is on IR already. So they can't afford any more additional injuries. These types of injuries for most teams would be catastrophic. It's not for the Rams because Matthew Stafford is amazing. Still remains to be, in my opinion, by far the most underrated quarterback in the league. Sean McVay is fantastic at overcoming these injuries through game planning. And furthermore, for this particular game, Arizona's defensive front is terrible. Horrible. So Rams should be able to run the ball with Kyren Williams. And that's going to take some pressure off the O-line to hold up. Now, the Cards' loss to Buffalo now looks more impressive after seeing the Dolphins game against Buffalo. Arizona did move it well for parts of the game. Got stagnant towards the end. That was without Marvin Harrison Jr. providing anything. I don't know what to make of this team, but I do think Kyler is going to be scrambling a lot today because that injury at right tackle is big for them. Worth mentioning, Sean McVay has owned the Cardinals in his career, 14-2. That doesn't go into my number, but I do tend to think about things like that. Even though it's a completely different coaching staff for Arizona, we don't know what the quarterback situation was like for a lot of those games. I do think that there are stylistic matchups in football that tend to be troublesome. I could only play the Rams here at this point. I just trust that coaching staff and the quarterback play so much more. A few more games to get to. Cincy KC. One game this week where I really haven't had a lot of really never did anything with this, despite the fact that we've kind of moved through 6 few times in this game. I'm just north of 6 is my number, like a minus 6.25, 47.5. I have major concerns over the state of the Bengals run D. Stinsy's O is broken right now, in my opinion, without T. Higgins, and we could be looking at a really good KC team. So T. Higgins being out again, Andre Yoshevus, Trenton Irwin get more work this week. They just don't have the ponies. And like Jamar Chase, everything is negative around him right now. I'm not saying his body, like he's not going to sign a contract with the team, a long-term extension. He's getting back into game shape. I know we want to think of these matchups in the past and think to ourselves, well, the Bengals are the kryptonite for the Chiefs. But I cannot help thinking this is just a different iteration of the Bengals team. The offense is just not there. And yes, it's only 1 week against the Patriots, but we have seen them struggle out of the gate many times in the past. I do think at some point they put it together, but right now, I struggle to see them scoring in neutral game states with the current state of their offense. Defensively, huge liabilities. The loss of DJ Reader killed their run defense. My only, the saving grace for the Bengals could be that their run D is so bad that the Chiefs force themselves into just pounding the ball with Pacheco as much as possible. That's probably best case scenario for the Bengals, and I don't know that they could necessarily stop it. But I don't know. I'm struggling to see the path to success. If this was week 1, my number would have been quite different on the game. And I'm not huge on like the overreaction week necessarily, because I think in some cases moves are justified. But I'm struggling to make a case for the Bengals other than maybe they just flip a switch. And it's certainly possible. Or the Chiefs just get into the same situation as the Ravens last week, where they build up a margin and then they get way too conservative. And that's a real Chiefs problem. Happened many times before. Pittsburgh and Denver, the last of the late games today. Again, not quite as drastic as the Indy Green Bay game. Pittsburgh was released early in the week, and it's been all Denver money since then. I think Pittsburgh 337 is the right number in the game. I understand the reasons for taking Denver. I do. There's a lot, like the Steelers consistently over the years. You bet them as an underdog. You fade them as a favorite. This is the thing. But at some point, we got to take X's and O's into account here. Clean injury report for Denver. Steelers are missing Isaac Samalu on the offensive line again. Justin Fields starts. But Bo Nix is bad. Very bad. Now, you might be able to credit the Seattle defense for shutting down the run, for forcing Nix into some mistakes last week. Defensive head coach in Mike McDonald. You're going to get the same here with the Steelers. It's a strong defense, really good defensive head coach. Like, is Bo Nix going to move the ball in this game? I don't see it. Sean Payton probably tries to run a lot. There was a point when Bo Nix threw his first interception last week. They shot to Sean Payton on the sideline. Guy looked like he had seen a ghost in that moment. There was a point last week where he just gave up on Nix in that game. He started to treat him like Russell Wilson a year ago. He's bad. He's a bad quarterback from what I've seen so far. People didn't think he was a first-round talent. He got drafted there. I think it's going to be very challenging for Denver to move the ball. Pittsburgh, sure, you can have concerns about that offense as well. And guess, they have to cover the spread. They're the favorite here. Patrick Surtain sticks on George Pickens. Who do they throw the ball to? Probably Pat Freiermuth a lot, but they probably run the ball a lot because that's what Pittsburgh likes to do. The Broncos' linebacking core is not great. They have to focus on Justin Fields in the running game as well. I feel like the Steelers are more likely to be able to move the ball in this game. So this would be a quote-unquote square opinion, opposite of the market. But I don't know. I think Denver's really bad. And yeah, there's like these trends about their September home field advantage or whatever. If you bet Denver and got a good number, I mean, mission accomplished. But I don't want anything to do with the Broncos in this type of price range right now. And this is a guy that's not even high on the Steelers either. Sunday Night Football. I'll remind everyone, I'm on air tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'll break down this game in a little bit more detail, including a full slate of props, including an SGP for tonight's game, as we do on every single watch along. But it's the Bears and the Texans. Saw a little bit of money on the Bears in the last few hours this morning. I make this Houston 6.5, total of 46. Obviously, we don't know what's happening with Chicago at receiver right now. Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, both banged up. My guess is that one of the two will play. I'm not super in love with D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Slowick winning by margin. And of course, the Texans have won by margin plenty of times. But they tend to be, I don't know, a little bit lackadaisical, so to speak. It's a defensive head coach with an OC that does like to run the ball. The running game looked good last week. Joe Mixon looked great. I don't know where the hell that's been. But I need to process more here, especially with the Bears' offensive situation with the wide receivers. Because after DJ Moore, they have DeAndre Carter, Velus Jones, Tyler Scott. Texans center Juice Scruggs is questionable, but the backup there, Jarrett Patterson, is fine. Don't think it would be huge. Really, really hard to make a number on this Bears game. The offense was so bad last week with Caleb Williams. And your priors are built off of what you thought the Bears would be based off of Caleb Williams being a number one pick. So, essentially, there aren't any priors. You got to downgrade the offense. You have to. Bottom 5 EPA, bottom 5 success rate, 4.3 yards per attempt, 93 yards through the air on 29 passes. Absurd. No big time throws, 2 turnover worthy plays. They couldn't run the ball. That's tough. That's tough. Houston, like I said, the downside here is sometimes they just get a little bit too run heavy on early downs. They force CJ Stroud to convert 3rd and longs. The Bears defense played well last week. Have to give that unit credit. But tough game. And again, there's people out there that are grabbing the Bears because the look ahead number was 3.5 and the game is 6.5. Well, the look ahead number was based off of what many people thought Caleb Williams to be, which was going to be like a league average quarterback going into the year. And he did not turn into a league average quarterback at all. Okay. That wraps up full coverage of every single game. I know some of you stick around for Survivor. So what I would say for Survivor is I like to put the ball in your hands, in your court, let's say, and whatever. Terrible with analogies. I don't know what I'm saying. We know what the circa millions Survivor owner percentages were, which were Baltimore and Houston being very, very highly owned. You have lots of other teams that are favored. I mean, Baltimore's an 8-point favorite, 8.5. Houston, 6 now. You have teams like Dallas, Detroit, Who am I missing here? Philly, technically, KC, that are favored in this type of range as well. Chargers, 4.5. I just say, listen, avoid the Ravens, avoid the Texans, pick who you think is most likely to win. If you want to incorporate some future value, of course, you can do that as well. But especially in big survivor pools, like you don't want to split a pot with thousands of people. You need these big favorites to go down. You need Cincy to lose to New England like last week. So avoid the chalk. Avoid the chalk. That's my suggestion to you. AJ Brown ruled out for Monday Night Football as well. You probably see some money come in right on Atlanta right now. Potentially the under. Both are probably good reacting to. I mean, the Ravens are, I'm pretty sure Ekshesh is who I think he was from last year, and he's a Ravens fan. But the Ravens are a very bad pick for Survivor. They're one of the worst possible today. I know your goal is to survive. Your goal is to survive and win. Win the pot yourself. So many better options. Even if you like the Ravens on the spread. So many better options than that. Okay, I am back here tonight. Sunday Night Football live watch along. Me, Clive Bixby, Johnny from Betstamp joining me, Jeff Feinberg as well. If you enjoyed today's show, drop a pizza emoji in the chat. It's probably harder to find a pizza emoji, but yeah, drop a pizza emoji in the chat if you enjoyed today's show. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Interesting card today. Got a lot of market resistance. It's week 2. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? My opinions versus others. We'll see how things go. Of course, play responsibly today. Don't chase losses. All of that stuff. I mean it in all sincerity. It sucks being an NFL Sunday. If you lose at 1 o'clock, you got 3 games at 4. You don't have to put more on them at all. Whatever. Just enjoy the day. It's a long season. We'll get it back if it's a bad day, but hopefully it's a good one. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. Smash the like button on the way out the door. This has been the Pizza Buffet presented by Fanduel. Good luck with your bets today, everyone. Peace out.